Welcome to Daily Tech Dose, your essential briefing on the evolving landscape of modern technology. Every day, we sift through the noise to bring you a curated digest of the latest in IT strategy, leadership, cybersecurity, data protection, and enterprise architecture, delivering the critical insights you need to stay ahead of the curve. Please take a moment to like this episode, subscribe to our video channel, and leave a comment below. Your engagement is vital. It helps the algorithm surface these deep dives to other tech leaders. Thank you for tuning in. Let's dive into today's briefing. Right now, the AI tools you're piloting, they're cheap, and that is honestly a massive trap.
Oh, absolutely. It's an illusion.
Right. We're looking at a landscape where, subsidized compute costs are masking this huge future financial liability. And at the very same time, we've got autonomous malware that's basically rendering our traditional security perimeters totally useless.
Yeah, it's a perfect storm.
It really is. So, to anchor everything we're covering today, from Ken and Subaya's June 10th, 2026 digest, I want to use this thought from Andy Grove. He said, "Bad companies are destroyed by crisis. Good companies survive them. Great companies are improved by them."
I mean, that is just the perfect framing for this exact moment in enterprise tech. Across all the operational areas we're looking at today, there's this common tension emerging.
Because the rapid deployment of all these systems is causing, micro crises everywhere. Right?
Yeah, exactly. In budget forecasting, network security, engineering leadership, we are definitely moving out of that fun experimental sandbox phase and, well, slamming right into the harsh realities of production-grade integration.
So our mission today is to connect those dots. We're going to tackle the hidden financial and architectural traps of generative AI, look at how the autonomous threat landscape is hunting inside our networks, and map out how leadership has to adapt to survive all this.
And we should probably unpack that financial trap first, because there is this pervasive illusion right now about how cheap inference costs are.
Okay, let's unpack this. Major cloud providers are just heavily subsidizing token costs to grab market share, right? It's exactly like the early days of rideshare apps.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Yeah, you could get a private car across town for $3 because venture capital was absorbing the real operational cost. It was a fantastic setup. But if you structured your entire daily commute around a $3 ride,
you were in for a massive shock when the market corrected.
Exactly, you're left in a huge financial hole.
And that analogy maps so perfectly to the current compute landscape, because why it matters isn't just a basic price hike. It's the structural shift in how we're actually using these models.
Because we aren't just doing simple prompt and response chatbots anymore.
Right, exactly. Engineering teams are deploying autonomous agent systems now, and when an agent loops through a multi-step reasoning process, say it's querying a database, then checking its own output, adjusting a parameter, and then querying again.
The token burn just explodes behind the scenes.
It multiplies exponentially. So that cheap, heavily subsidized pilot project that looks super efficient today, it transforms into this crippling operational expense the moment those toll booth prices normalize.
Which is why the strategic countermeasure we're seeing everywhere is AI sovereignty.
Yes, absolutely.
Organizations are realizing, they can't just rent massive generalized public models for specific high-frequency internal stuff. You have to build, host, and manage smaller, purpose-built models inside your own perimeter.
Which keeps your operating costs predictable, right?
Okay.
And it fundamentally secures your proprietary data. But achieving that sovereignty means you need a totally new architectural stack.
Right, because we're not just pinging an external API endpoint anymore.
No, not at all. The 2026 AI agent stack, it actually introduces 6 distinct layers between a foundational model and a production-ready system.
6 layers, wow.
Yeah, and 3 specific shifts are really defining it. First, you have the widespread adoption of the Model Context Protocol, or MCP, which is the standard for how models use external enterprise tools.
Okay, and the second?
The integration of reasoning models built specifically for complex multi-step execution. And third, memory has evolved from just a simple vector database add-on into a stateful architectural core.
Wait, meaning what exactly?
Meaning teams are now having to engineer exactly how an agent persists context across multiple isolated interactions.
Okay, but pushback here. If we are moving from a single API call to a 6-layer stack, reasoning models, MCP connections, stateful memory, Aren't we just creating 6 brand new ways for the system to break?
Oh yeah, that is the exact architectural fragility keeping enterprise architects awake at night.
Right, it sounds like a massive tower of dependencies just waiting to collapse under its own weight.
It really is, and the consensus from the developers building these frameworks is that you have to enforce extreme minimalism. You start with the absolute bare minimum stack required to get the job done.
You don't just throw all 6 layers at it on day one.
Exactly. You only introduce a complex dependency, like an MCP tool connection, when the simply architecture empirically fails. Over-engineering on day one is catastrophic.
Which flows right into this emerging concept of AI debt. Rushing to build these massive agent stacks without that discipline is creating a devastating technical burden.
Yes, the new technical debt.
The digest listed 7 specific pitfalls teams are blindly stepping into. The first one is foundational, initiating projects without clear, measurable business goals.
Right, so you end up maintaining this highly complex, computationally expensive system that delivers zero practical ROI.
Then the second one compounds it, feeding poor quality data into autonomous systems. In a normal software setup, bad data gives you a localized error.
But in an agent workflow, that bad data gets ingested, reasoned upon, and the resulting error is amplified and executed at scale.
That's terrifying. And the third issue.
Model drift. So this isn't code breaking, it's the baseline distribution of real-world data shifting over time. If a model's assumptions become stale, its automated decisions silently turn into massive liabilities.
Wow. And the fourth debt is a huge security oversight. Granting these agents overly broad access permissions, we're seeing systems given effectively root access just to make development easier.
Which is a nightmare. Fifth is applying automation to fundamentally broken business processes.
Right, so you aren't actually innovating, you're just engineering a way to execute your existing flaws much faster.
Exactly. The sixth source of debt is agent sprawl. When different departments deploy unmanaged, overlapping endpoint agents, you generate duplicate logic, and these orphaned agents become unmonitored attack vectors.
And finally, the seventh trap is uncritical reliance on AI-generated code.
Yeah, accepting automated code without rigorous security reviews is effectively baking zero-day vulnerabilities directly into your continuous integration pipeline.
So, look at your own projects right now. Are you deploying tools that actually deliver value, or are you just setting up future headaches in AI debt because you didn't define the goal?
That's the real question. And to actually clear that debt and generate value, the architecture itself has to evolve. Because right now, we're relying on models that don't really understand what they're doing.
They just predict the next most likely token based on statistical patterns.
Exactly. Which brings us to a huge inflection point. The shift toward causal AI. Predictive models only map correlations. They calculate what's likely to happen tomorrow based entirely on yesterday's data.
Which, for strategic enterprise decision-making, is kind of useless, right?
Very much so. What's fascinating here is the introduction of counterfactual reasoning, or causal AI. Instead of just identifying patterns, causal models actually map cause and effect.
So they test alternative what-if scenarios.
Exactly. They simulate what would occur if a business actively altered a specific variable, separating the real drivers of success from just random coincidence.
To put that into an operational context, imagine your Q3 sales suddenly spike. A standard predictive model just says, hey, sales went up. Expect more high sales. It gives no insight.
Right, it's just repeating the data back to you.
But a causal model tests the variables. It can tell you, did sales increase because of that brilliant new marketing push? Or was it just a predictable seasonal trend that would have happened anyway?
Which is so powerful because causal reasoning replaces those hidden assumptions with transparent logic.
It closes the trust gap. But even with causal AI mapping out optimal efficiencies, there's a hard ceiling, isn't there?
Yeah, because AI, even causal AI, still only synthesizes existing data. It optimizes what is already known. Generating true market breakthroughs relies on human imagination.
And ironically, extensive industry experience can actively suppress that imagination.
Oh, absolutely it can.
Relying on safe, proven thinking is exactly like walking down a well-worn hiking trail. It's safe, you won't get lost, but you'll never discover anything new if you refuse to step off it.
That's a great analogy. And dismantling that rigid legacy mindset required structural changes in leadership. You can't just demand innovation from your team.
You have to create the environment for it.
Right. It means actively swapping an instinctive no because evaluation metric for a yes and exploration phase.
Keep those unconventional concepts alive long enough to actually test their viability.
Exactly. It also means reframing the core challenge. Instead of just telling a team, hey, reduce churn by 5%, you task them with solving the root customer friction that causes the churn in the first place.
And we also have to recognize the cognitive cost of our communication tools. The constant barrage of asynchronous notifications actively degrades deep problem solving.
Yes. Fostering innovation means structurally carving out quiet reflection time away from emails. You have to reward intellectual curiosity just as highly as technical execution.
But here is the tension. While we are carefully nurturing human creativity internally, threat actors are leveraging these exact same AI advancements to scale their offensives.
Oh, yeah. We are facing an entirely new category of autonomous threats now.
The Digest explained this chilling lab proof of concept for an autonomous AI worm.
It's terrifying. It uses open-weight models to independently scan a network, identify a vulnerability, write the custom exploit for that specific flaw, deploy the payload, and laterally spread.
All without a human command and control server guiding the steps.
Right. And so what here is that this completely changes the economics of cyber attacks. It costs an attacker pennies in compute to generate an attack that used to require a team of specialized engineers.
So traditional behavioral detection won't work anymore. If adversaries are generating unique zero-day exploits on the fly, traditional endpoint detection is basically obsolete. Does that mean we default entirely to zero trust at the network layer?
It absolutely does. This necessitates a ruthless implementation of microsegmentation. You must have granular visibility into the behavior and permissions of every single entity, human, or AI agent in your network.
Okay, but translating that level of architectural urgency to a board of directors, that introduces a translation problem. If we need budget to fight autonomous worms, how do you explain an open-weight model to a board?
The short answer, you don't.
Wait, really? You just skip it?
You stop treating cyber risk as a technical problem. Directors manage enterprise risk, not network topology. You have to translate those security gaps into measurable business consequences.
Like financial loss, downtime, legal liability.
Exactly. It's about scenario analysis. Instead of saying, we need budget to patch an API gateway flaw, you present the business reality.
You say something like, if this specific vendor connection is compromised, our logistics chain halts.
Right. The recovery will take 48 hours, resulting in a quantifiable revenue loss of X million dollars, plus specific regulatory penalties.
That makes so much more sense. It helps the board prioritize the real exposures honestly, instead of just blindly approving a technical expense out of fear.
Yes, and that disciplined risk management is incredibly relevant when we look at the physical front lines of an enterprise. Specifically, OT networks, the actual factory floor.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because historically, manufacturing machinery was completely air-gapped. But the drive for data analytics has forced these massive industrial systems to connect to standard office IT networks.
Which opens a terrifying door for malware.
It really does. It's the equivalent of installing a highly secure bank vault, but wiring the electronic locking mechanism directly into the lobby receptionist's iPad. A single phishing email clicked in HR suddenly has a network pathway to a multi-million-dollar assembly line.
And securing that environment requires a framework known as segment with purpose. Because you can't just install a modern endpoint agent on a 15-year-old robotic arm.
So you have to enforce security at the network boundary.
Exactly. You start by mapping every single piece of equipment and defining its absolute minimum required communication. Establish what normal east-west traffic looks like.
And then draw strict digital boundaries.
Right, using jump servers and localized firewalls.
Right.
You contain potential incidents to small areas without causing widespread downtime.
But what happens when a critical security alert actually pops up on a live manufacturing machine? You can't just unplug a factory line. That destroys materials and costs hundreds of thousands of dollars.
No, you definitely can. This is where disciplined risk evaluation supersedes blind compliance. First, you verify if the flaw actually exists.
Because automated scanners often just guess based on software version numbers, right?
Exactly. They don't see the surrounding architecture. If the vulnerable machine is hidden deep behind strict microsegmentation boundaries, the practical risk of exploitation is mathematically very low.
And what if it's legacy tech that simply cannot accept a modern patch?
You don't halt production, you implement compensating controls. You formally document the accepted risk and add external layers of defense like disabling specific network protocols routing to that machine.
So you neutralize the threat pathway without touching the delicate machinery itself.
Exactly.
Okay, zooming out from the enterprise level to the societal macro level, we're seeing governments struggling to manage these exact same technological shockwaves.
Yes, they really are.
The UK is preparing this aggressive legislation aimed at restricting social media access for kids under 16. But the mechanism they are proposing is a massive architectural shift.
It is. The legislation specifically targets explicit AI-generated content and deepfakes. But instead of relying on the social media companies to moderate their own feeds, the government is pressuring the hardware manufacturers.
By demanding device-level controls on smartphones and tablets to block explicit material by default.
Exactly. Functionally, that means pushing the filtration logic down into the operating system kernel or the display drivers. It fundamentally alters how a device renders data, bypassing the application layer entirely.
And the enforcement mechanism is intense. If tech executives fail to implement these controls within 3 months, the government is threatening criminal liability.
It's a level of state intervention we haven't seen in this space, and Canada is currently drafting similar temporary safety compliance laws.
It's wild, but it highlights this glaring contradiction in government policy right now.
The structural paradox, yeah. On one hand, state governments are heavily subsidizing the rapid expansion of AI infrastructure to maintain global economic competitiveness.
And on the other hand, they are scrambling to draft emergency legislation against the severe risks those very technologies create.
It's an incredibly turbulent operational landscape right now.
It really is. We've talked about navigating the hidden financial costs of AI tokens, re-architecting our stacks to rely on causal reasoning, defending against autonomous malware, and adjusting to hardware-level state regulations.
It requires such rigorous, disciplined engineering to survive it.
Absolutely. And as we construct all these complex digital boundaries, micro-segmentation, stateful memory layers, device-level filters, to protect ourselves from the very automated systems we are rushing to build, you have to wonder, will the ultimate zero-trust boundary of the future simply be the one between human imagination and the automated systems we rely on every day?
Thank you for joining us for today's digest. Our goal is to equip you with the perspective necessary to lead with confidence. For a deeper dive, head to the text version of this digest, as mentioned in the show notes, which contains links to all sources. To help us grow this community of practice, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. By engaging with the video, you're helping other engineering and tech leaders discover this resource. We'll see you tomorrow. Keep building and stay secure.